Aidan stood frozen in place, his gaze locked on the girl by the window. The light of the ocean spilled through the glass, bathing her in a soft glow that made her look almost otherworldly. She was still reading, her black hair falling like silk around her shoulders, her delicate fingers turning the pages of a book that seemed to absorb all her attention. His heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't just stand here staring, but something about her had taken his breath away. He glanced around, hoping no one noticed the awkward way he was lingering. Then, without thinking, Aidan did something silly. He waved at her, an exaggerated, almost childish wave, trying to catch her attention. For a moment, nothing happened. His hand felt ridiculous hanging in the air, and he was about to drop it when the girl looked up from her book. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, Aidan's breath caught in his throat. She smiled. Not a mocking smile or one filled with disdain, but a pleasant, warm one that made her eyes crinkle slightly at the corners. It was a smile that made Aidan's heart skip a beat. He straightened his back, trying to push away the awkwardness, and made his way over to her, forcing himself to appear confident. As he approached, he cleared his throat. "Good day, my lady," he said, bowing slightly, though his nerves made it more of a jerky movement. "I am Sir Aidan Stormbreaker." The name sounded bold and impressive in his head, but as the words left his mouth, they felt strange and foreign. The girl giggled, a soft, musical sound that made Aidan feel a little more foolish than he already did. She brushed a stray strand of black hair out of her face, tucking it behind her ear, and her eyes twinkled with amusement. "You seem rather young to be a knight, Sir Aidan Stormbreaker," she said, her voice light and teasing. Aidan's cheeks flushed, but he quickly recovered, lifting his chin slightly. "I assure you, I've been knighted," he said with more conviction than he felt. "And I plan to win great honors and glory in the coming tournament." The girl raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Is that so?" she said. "Well, I wish you the best of luck, then. It's not every day one meets a knight with such grand ambitions." Aidan felt a swell of pride, though the nervous flutter in his stomach hadn't quite disappeared. He glanced at the book she had been reading, curious. "What are you reading?" he asked, gesturing toward the open pages. For a moment, the girl hesitated, her cheeks flushing the faintest shade of pink. She pushed the book away slightly, as though embarrassed by its contents. "Oh, it's nothing really," she said quickly, her tone a little bashful. "Just something to pass the time." Aidan found her embarrassment charming, but before he could press further, the mood shifted abruptly. A tall, imposing figure approached from behind Aidan, his presence casting a long shadow over the peaceful interaction. Aidan turned his head to see a man in gleaming green armor, his dark hair cropped short and his face set in a serious, almost scowling expression. The man's eyes swept over Aidan, sharp and cold, before they turned to the girl. "Is everything all right, my lady?" the man asked, his voice steady but with a note of irritation beneath it. The girl glanced up at him and nodded quickly. "Yes, Keith, everything's fine. We were just talking." "Keith?" Aidan felt a wave of unease ripple through him at the man's presence. Keith's eyes flicked back to him, filled with suspicion and annoyance. It was clear that Keith didn't like him being here, didn't like him talking to the girl. Aidan stood his ground, though he could feel his confidence waning under the knight's withering stare. He had just introduced himself, had barely started a conversation with the girl, and already this man was looking at him like he was some kind of intruder. Keith didn't say anything at first. He just stared at Aidan for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, he stepped forward, putting a hand on Aidan's shoulder with a firmness that bordered on aggression. "I think it's time for you to leave," Keith said, his tone making it clear that it wasn't a suggestion. Aiden's jaw clenched, anger rising in his chest. He didn't want to leave. He had barely spoken to the girl, and now this man, this knight, was pushing him out like he didn't belong here. Aiden glared back at Keith, his hand twitching toward the hilt of his sword, but he forced himself to stop. This wasn't the place to pick a fight, not when he was still a stranger in the city. The girl glanced between them, a flicker of concern passing over her face. She stood up quickly, stepping between them before things could escalate. "It's all right, Keith," she said softly. "We were just talking." Keith didn't look convinced, but he backed off slightly, his hand dropping from Aiden's shoulder. "Go on, scum," the Green Knight whispered to him as he stepped back. A hot flash of anger crossed Aiden's eyes. He wanted to hit this arrogant prick but thought better of it with the young woman standing there. Aiden swallowed his anger and nodded, though every fiber of his being wanted to stay, to talk to her more, to prove he wasn't some boy to be dismissed. But he could tell he wasn't going to win this fight, not here, not now. As he turned to leave, the girl's voice called out after him, sweet and sincere. "Good luck in the tournament, Sir Aiden Stormbreaker," she said, her smile warm as she peeked out from behind Keith's broad frame. "I wish you well." Aiden's heart lifted slightly at her words, though the sting of being escorted out still lingered. He gave her a small, respectful nod, trying to muster what remained of his dignity, and walked out of the library, Keith's cold eyes following him all the way to the door. By the time Aiden returned to the rundown inn where he was staying, the anger had faded, replaced by a deep sense of frustration. He had felt so alive, so hopeful in those few moments talking to the girl, whoever she was, and now he was left feeling foolish, like a child pretending to be something he wasn't. He made his way to the stables, where Herman's horse was housed, needing the quiet company of the only thing that still felt familiar to him. The horse nickered softly as Aiden approached, nudging his arm as if sensing his mood. "Hey, old friend," Aiden murmured, running a hand down the horse's neck. He pulled a small carrot from his pocket and offered it to the horse, who took it eagerly. "Looks like you're still my only friend in the world, huh?" The horse chewed contentedly, its large eyes watching Aiden as he leaned against the stall door, lost in thought. "I thought I was doing well," Aiden muttered, more to himself than to the horse. "I finally got the nerve to talk to her. And then that damn knight comes in and ruins it." He sighed, resting his forehead against the stall's wooden door. "Maybe I don't belong here," he whispered, the doubt creeping back into his mind. "I'm not like them. They have titles and land. All I have is this armor and a dead man's sword." The horse snorted, as if in response, and Aiden couldn't help but smile faintly. At least the horse didn't care about titles or land. "Maybe tomorrow will be different," he said, more for his own reassurance than anything else. "Maybe I'll win a match or two in the tournament. Maybe. Just maybe I'll get another chance to talk to her." The horse nudged him again, and Aiden gave it another pat, feeling a small flicker of hope rekindle in his chest. Tomorrow was a new day. A chance to prove himself. A chance to change his fortune. For now, though, all he could do was wait.